Welcome to the fairest show on television. First tonight, the growing calls for a ceasefire from the UN to Democratic members of Congress. Some call it a ceasefire, others a humanitarian pause. Whatever you want to call it, we told you it would happen. Whole bunch of people, and you saw the protests as well. But let's be clear. Only pro-Hamas folks, Hamas supporters, want a ceasefire right now. And let me explain why. Israel may now have the upper hand in the ground war. At the very least, it is on the attack. We're going to go to the maps now to show you what's going on. Gaza City is, of course, the Hamas stronghold right here. The Israelis have managed to come in, as we predicted, on three fronts. Down here by the sea, through the Erez checkpoint here, and then lastly, they have cut off Hamas north to south there. The Gaza City, which is the stronghold for Hamas, it's still a ways in to Shifa Hospital, which is the Hamas military headquarters. This here is about 5 miles there. Shifa Hospital is what the Israelis were able to show you. If we click here and get the map to come up, this was where the underground command center for Hamas had been located and still is. If the Israelis want to attack that, they have to come in all the way and get at that on the ground. Hamas is still using the thousands, if not millions, trapped here in Gaza City as human shields because they are stopping anybody from moving south. The Israelis have been telling them for a couple of weeks to move south. Good news today, Israel rescued a hostage that happened up and around here. She is with her family now. That wouldn't have been possible without the Israeli ground invasion. There are 238 other hostages. So if there is a ceasefire now, Hamas will use the lull in fighting to regroup and rearm and rebuild its military structure. Hamas will use the lull in bombing to move the 239 hostages, giving up any advantage the Israelis might have had. Aid supplies would stream into Gaza. History tells us much, if not all, will be stolen by Hamas. It also shows Iran and the rest of the world they can launch a surprise attack on a sovereign country, kill 1,400 civilians, kidnap another 240. And when Israel begins to defend itself, the world will call for a ceasefire. Of course, domestically in the United States, it just emboldens the pro-Hamas, pro-terror supporters on American college campuses. We're going to get to those words in just a minute. But first, the Israeli Prime Minister explains his thinking.
Just as the United States would not agree to a ceasefire after the bombing of Pearl Harbor or after the terrorist attack of 9/11, Israel will not agree to a cessation of hostilities with Hamas.
And why would they agree to a ceasefire? You might remember this video from October 7th. This is who Israel is fighting against. Hamas fighters bringing back a hostage and her mutilated body. Shani Luke was paraded through Gaza in barely her underwear as crowds celebrated. Israel's president said today they have evidence Hamas beheaded her in the hours after the attack. If Israel, of course, agrees to a ceasefire, then Hamas wins. Yet all you hear about in the media today is the suffering of the Gazans, like this question at the White House press briefing.
The death toll in Gaza keeps rising. Is the U.S. at any point calling for a humanitarian ceasefire?
So as if a ceasefire would suddenly make things all better in Gaza. It would no longer be a humanitarian disaster. That could happen tomorrow by Hamas, not by Israel. The New York Times reports as Gazans scrounge for food and water, Hamas sits on a rich trove of supplies. Hamas has spent years stockpiling desperately needed fuel, food, and medicine, as well as ammunition and weapons in the miles of tunnels it has carved out under Gaza. So if fuel and food suddenly come across the border, Hamas will steal it just like they did before. Only pro-Hamas people want a ceasefire. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.